What's up, y'all? I'm Lady, and today I am here with another video. In this video, I am going to do a 3-year reading wrap up. That's right, a 3-year reading wrap up. I looked back at my videos, and the last time I did a yearly wrap up was in 2018. And I also just did a wrap up for 2020. So in this video, I want to cover those years where I was absent from this channel. It is basically just me wanting to have a tracking of my reading throughout the years on this channel. I will not bore you all with all of the books that I read, but I want to touch on those that I loved and some of those that were just total disappointments. So before we go into the books, let's take a scroll through my Goodreads. So those were the books from 2019, 2020, and 2021. In 19, I read 70 books. In 20, I read 39. And then in 21, I read 40 books. Usually, my goal is 52 books in a year. One book a week, I feel, is doable with any schedule that I may have. So 2020 was the first year in a very long time that I did not reach that 52 books a week goal. I'm okay with that because we know what was going down at that time. So I'm okay with that. But each year I want to go higher with the number of books I read, but not too high, because I still want to be intentional about the books that I read. So let's talk about a few things. Some things I finished. I actually finished the Walking Dead comic series, and I absolutely enjoyed that reading experience. I never did pick back up the TV series, which I think is on season 11 now. I have no intentions of picking back up on the TV series, but the Walking Dead series, which the TV really strayed away from with the comics. So but I highly recommend the comic. So I'm glad I finished that series. Another 2 books I want to talk about, the Supreme books. Those were by Edward Kelsey Moore, and that is The Supremes at Earl's All You Can Eat and The Supreme Sings the Heartache Blues. I may have mentioned these in 2019 or early 2020. But those were excellent books, and I'm excited because I found out that they just finished the movie adaptation. So hopefully we get the movie adaptation sometime in this year or next. Great cast from I might say her name wrong, Uzo, I think that's it, y'all. Uzo Aduba. Sanaa Lathan, Mekhi Phifer, some of my favorites. So I am looking forward to seeing that movie, and I absolutely enjoyed those books. I got into some contemporary romance. I particularly enjoyed the Brown Sister series. That's by Talia Hibbert. And she had the 3 books with the Brown sisters. My favorite was Take a Hint, Dani Brown. I related to Dani more in the 3 sisters. And I enjoyed those books. They were fun. Contemporary romance. I discovered them because I had to read one for a book club. And so I just continued with that series, and I'm glad I did. Another series is the Geneva Holiday series. Geneva Holiday, if you don't know, that's pen name that Bernice L. McFadden uses when she writes. I don't know if it's considered romance or erotica. It wasn't too erotic in my opinion, but she has 5 books. Heat, Groove, and some other ones I forget the names, but they were excellent. I read all 5 of those in one summer. They were nice, drama filled, steamy, just good turning the page books that I love to read during the summertime. So I'm glad that I have read those, and I'm going to pick back up because I still have some Bernice L. McFadden, some of her other novels that I haven't gotten to yet. So I hope to get to that this year. Also, while I was away, I discovered Taylor Jenkins Reid. Now, I think there may be some bookish drama or controversy about her books, but I didn't see it. I get where there could be some things that were problematic. I get that, but just her writing in general, I absolutely enjoyed it. I had to read, this is another one because it was a book club pick. I had to read it. So that one was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. And I enjoyed that story. I really did. And so much so that I then read Malibu Rising and her book Daisy Jones and the Six. And those were really good. Her writing is just really good. Character building and all of that. I just enjoyed it, her book. So if there's some drama, if she's canceled, I'm sorry, but I did enjoy those books. Also, I got into Elizabeth Acevedo. I'm sure like many of you did. I read The Poet X, Clap When You Land, and With Fire on High. She's one of those authors now that I will read from now on, and I'm excited that her first adult fiction is coming out this year. So I'm excited for that. Let's talk about some disappointments, okay? One big disappointment was Transcendent Kingdom by Yaa Gyasi. It was one of my highly anticipated books because I absolutely loved Homegoing. I read it a second time and it still holds up. I still give that book 5 stars, and I was really looking forward to Transcendent Kingdom, but it fell flat for me. It fell flat. I just couldn't get into it. It took me a long time to read it, and the story just wasn't there. I don't know how else to describe it. The story just wasn't there for me. I was very disappointed in that one. Another disappointment was The Other Black Girl by Zakiya Harris. The Other Black Girl, it made its rounds on BookTube and Bookstagram and all the places, and it sucked. It sucked. All of the plot, all the exciting possible parts of the story took place within the last 50 minutes. I was going to say 50 minutes of the movie, 50 minutes of the 50 pages of the story. Okay. And then the so-called twist, what was really going on, it wasn't good. It wasn't good. So I do not recommend. I do not recommend. Those two were disappointing books. I probably would continue to read those authors, but those two books I could have done without. So if you know me, then you know that short story collections are really a hit or miss for me. Even when they're well done, I end up wanting more, and that becomes a disappointment for me. So I just really stay away from short story collections. But I did read some great collections. One that I will say is now my favorite short story collection of all times, and that's The Secret Lives of Church Ladies by Deesha Field, y'all. This one had some really great stories. They were real, true life stories, things that should be discussed by church ladies, but they're not discussing these things. I ended up picking this one up just on its title alone, and then I had to reread it because the book club that I'm in voted and chose it. So I read that one and listened to it, and I really enjoyed it. Another collection was by J. California Cooper. I read Wild Star, Seeking Midnight Sun, and The Future Has a Past. Those were both excellent short story collections. I think it's pretty much well known. You can't go wrong with J. California Cooper. She's excellent. And then Everything Inside by Edwidge Danticat. I think I talked about that one on my channel as I was reading it. It was good. It was so good. I highly recommend it. So depending on the topics, I feel is what draws me in for short story collections. So I'll keep that in mind as I, pick some, because those that I have read and enjoyed really makes me want to read more, but I don't know. So we'll see what happens with the next collection that I pick up. Favorites, right? That's the important part, not the disappointments and all that other stuff. What were my favorite books that I read in those 3 years? So I have a list, and I'll go through the list, give a little details. Mostly what my thoughts are, how the book made me feel is usually what's most important to me when reading. The first one is Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson. This one was so good. This was my first book by this author, and I have since read 2 more of her books, and I enjoyed those as well, or at least 1 more, I know for sure. But Monday's Not Coming, I actually read this one twice. I read the physical book, and then 2 years later I listened to it. And I think I enjoyed reading the physical book better. Monday's Not Coming is about a girl who is in middle school, and her best friend Monday is missing. And there's a huge plot twist in this one. And, just the theme around this one is focusing on, missing children, how children can fall through the cracks of our system. And it was heartbreakingly good. Okay. Such a good book. The next one, Heavy by Kiese Laymon. I've already discussed that one on my channel, so I won't go into details, but Heavy is an excellent memoir. Excellent. I'm talking about the transparency and the realness and rawness in which he tells his story is it's beautiful. Beautiful. Another favorite was Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. Basically this one just lets you know that the justice system we have here in America, it just sucks. Okay. And I think I talked about that one on my channel, so I won't go into detail, but I highly recommend it. Educated by Tara Westover. I don't think when I read this one that I mentioned it at all on my channel, but this one was another great memoir. She told her story so well. I wasn't familiar with like where her people are from. I can't remember. Some Midwest small town where she lived. Her father in that story or in her memoir is just a lot. Okay. Her family in general, what she went through, it's a wonder. She's sane, but I'm glad that she was able to write about it. I highly recommend Educated. Another favorite, Untamed State by Roxane Gay. This one is one of those where you have to have your mind right. You can't go into this book with just any mental state. Okay, so if you're feeling low and down, I say don't read this one. In Untamed State, we have a lady who she goes to visit her family in Haiti, and she is end up kidnapped, held for ransom, and then the dad wants to negotiate with the kidnappers, and she ends up having to stay there. And that's all I'll say about that. I did not like her dad. I was so upset with her dad while reading that story, and I definitely would recommend Untamed State, but get your mind right. Grace by Natasha Dion. This one was beautifully written. Grace is another one because it's a slave narrative, I believe. Yeah. It's during slavery time. I'll put it that way. And it has some hard things, some hard subjects and stuff that the character goes through. But Grace is so well written. So well written. Then I read The Book of Night Women by Marlon James. This one is what I call top tier writing. Okay? These women that he wrote about in the Book of Night Women just have stuck with me even to this day when I think about them. Marlon James did an excellent job with this one, and I hadn't read anything else but A Brief History of 7 Killings. So I really enjoyed The Book of Night Women. Okay. Then I read The Last Thing You Surrender by Leonard Pitts Jr. Well, I shouldn't say then I read the next favorite, okay? Because these were favorites over the 3 years, okay? So that's how that goes. But I talked a lot and did a whole reading journal vlog of The Last Thing You Surrender. It's now one of my top favorite books, as well as Leonard Pitts Jr. is now one of my top favorite authors, okay? I did read a classic, Native Son by Richard Wright. I wanted to read that one. I pushed that one up at the first part of, I want to say 2020 is when I read it, because I wanted to watch the movie. But I couldn't watch the movie. I didn't enjoy, I maybe only watched the first 25, 30 minutes of it and just wasn't into it. But the book, OMG. So good. So many things to unpack when it comes to Bigger. That's the character in the book. But I just won't go into it. Native Son, it's a classic by Richard Wright. Read it. Another classic, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. This one was a turn of century coming of age story, because this one is the little girl, Francie. It's early 1900s, like 1910, somewhere in there. And she is growing up in early Brooklyn before it becomes what we know it is today. I read Daddy Was a Numbers Runner, and another book that mentioned this one, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, which made me pick it up, and I did enjoy it. Another favorite is Cass by Isabel Wilkerson. This one is a must read, just like her other book. they come off like a history book, but the way she tells these stories, you do not realize, or it doesn't feel like you're actually reading nonfiction. Cass was great, just like The Warmth of Other Suns. It's one that I say take your time to read. I read the physical book as well as listened to some of it on audiobook. But Cass is great. It opened my eyes to so many things. I mean, like, racism and the discussion of race and all of that is, a heavy topic as it is, but Cass brought about some things that I did not think about beforehand. So that's why it's absolutely one of my favorites. Another favorite was Yellow Wife by Sadika Johnson. This one is fiction based on a real story. And this one made its rounds in, the bookish community, I think in 21. So many of you may have read that one. It was really good. Well done. The author told this story very well. And the last favorite that I want to discuss is Sweet Tooth by Jeff Lemire. So this one was a graphic novel. All of the volumes had been released by the time I got to it. So I read the huge compendium, which was like this thick. It felt like holding it around. But I absolutely loved Sweet Tooth. And what made me pick it up was I had saw season 1 on Netflix. But I don't know if another season is coming about. I need to Google that. But the graphic novel was excellent. So at the start of the story, you're in a hospital and humans are being born, but they are like human animal hybrids. So all of the new babies that are being born with these animal features and abilities. And so the world is changing. And that's the start of this world that we're living in Sweet Tooth. So I highly recommend that one. I enjoyed that. Oh, I just so enjoyed that story. So that's it. A 3-year reading wrap up. I hope you all enjoyed this. If there are any books that I showed in my scroll through that I did not discuss, if you want to talk about it, let me know in the comment section below. But that's it for me in this video. I'm Lady, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye, y'all.